Furnace Rework in a nutshell. The furnace that we all know, hate and don't use is getting finally reworked. It will remain as a 4 elixir rare card, nothing is changed on this front. However, everything else is entirely new. Like bro is not even a building anymore. He is now a troop with a slow movement speed, which would allow him to spawn around the same number of fire spirits as the old furnace if played in the back. This technically means that as a card, this would always be providing more value than the older furnace, given that it's the same but with a free ranged troop. But in a real game, you might need to use it reactively on defense in a higher position, so the value you get out of it can be a bit inconsistent. The damage he deals with his regular attack isn't really that horrible, though his attack speed is really slow, but the fire spirits that he spawns will kind of compensate for that. Also, his slow attack speed and low damage are an advantage against Monk because he will be one of the few ranged troops that don't really get hard countered by him. His range is the exact same as the Musketeer and Flying Machine, so it's really high, and he can attack flying cards. It's basically a tankier Musketeer that spawns fire spirits. As you can guess, this card is extremely defensive, not only because it just clogs up a lane entirely and makes pushing into it really uncomfortable with the endless wave of spirits, but also because every second he spends attacking is a second he is not walking, which means he would spawn more spirits overall the longer he is standing still on your side of the arena. In addition to that, the spirits he keeps spawning will target something like a balloon and take it out even if the furnace was locked on a lava hound. Or if you prefer, you can play him on the opposite side of an enemy push and pressure with the spirits on the opposite lane, since his range does allow him to do that. An interesting thing I noticed is that when you deploy him, there is a near instant spawn for the first fire spirit. With this instant spawn, you have the option to drop him on the bridge behind the push if you want to protect some swarm card. One cool trick is that playing him on the river will have the spirit spawn on the opponent's side, so it will cover up a bigger area. Aside offense, mastering this timing on defense is one of the most important things to learn if you want to use him effectively. Simply mistiming him by half a second can change a good defensive sequence into a failed defense with a ton of damage taken on your tower. But getting their timing right can pull off some of the craziest defenses against certain troops for huge positive elixir trades. After a defense, you obviously can counter push with it, though I wouldn't recommend you wait for it to get near the bridge to deploy your cards because it makes taking it out easier. Instead, I would just counter push with it when it's too far in the back, so the fire spirits would be the main support for your win condition. And since the furnace is far back, taking him out won't be easy, so any troops left over from the opponent's defense will have a furnace to confront. Countering him with spells isn't as effective since, unlike the Musketeer, if you fireball him, he isn't really a dead meat as he will keep sending over fire spirits. And him being 4 elixir makes bigger spells like lightning and rocket a very big commitment if you don't hit something else with him. Obviously, it also applies to playing something like Fireball Log because they do add up to 6 elixir. Poison is the best spell against him since he is a spawner, so it will basically kill him and his spawned units, especially considering that unlike other spawned units that die to regular Princess Tower, the fire spirits he spawns need to be dealt with. Although poison is usually very effective against spawners if the enemy uses it against them on offense because they would negate the spawned skeletons or bats or whatever, so their tank would get more damage, this is irrelevant against the furnace because the spirits have some decent-ish HP and they would just jump and die, so it doesn't really matter if they take a tick of damage before jumping. One major difference between him and other spawners is that the spawned units don't really protect him, so the combination of being fragile and having no meat shields makes him more vulnerable than other spawners, and in some rare cases those spirits work against him, not for him, so watch out from that. At first I thought this has to be a beatdown card. I mean, it can clog a lane entirely, allowing you to safely build a push on the opposite lane without getting pressure, and the constant spirits serve as a decent anti-swarm splash damage, which can be very helpful when combined with some strong single targeting troops. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that this would absolutely suck in heavy decks, and it's better off in a cycle deck for multiple reasons. First of all, you need to babysit him with small cycle cards or he will die very easily when you are defending with him. He is closer to a Musketeer than an E-Wiz in a sense of you can't really only play him on his own and expect him to hold his own ground. And obviously, heavier decks tend to not do well with these cards cause most of the time you would have to spend like another 5 elixir on just one more card to protect him with it. Second of all, he really doesn't do that well DPS wise, so much so that you can't really defend the balloon with him without getting a hit on your tower. Small note, they kind of buffed his damage a tiny bit, so he can do it now. All the footage in this video is with the buffed damage, except the previous balloon clip, that's an old one. Playing him in a cycle deck allows you to add 1 or 2 tiny cards into the mix and changing the outcome from thousands of damage to only a couple of hundred damage. And just the idea of him being on the map and getting constant chip damage or forcing out responses continuously really screams minor deck in my opinion. For King Tower activations, obviously Bro is a ranged card, so I don't know what you would expect here. The Fire Spirits themselves I guess could activate with Nado plus small card, but it's really hard to pull off. There is this one that's like near impossible to pull off and involves both the Fisherman and the Nado. It's useless in a real game, but it's like way too funny to not show here. Here is the new arena. Honestly, it's a bit basic, but the presentation is great with that castle up there that looks in theme with the furnace himself. Also, the background music in the video is from the next season. Fun fact, when I played against bots in the dev build, I figured they were still reacting to the new furnace as if it was like the old one, so if you played against them, they might earthquake it. You probably don't need exploits to beat bots, but I thought it was like too cool to not share, my dudes.